Hi there, welcome to Across the Tech Pond, the US European webcast and podcast covering the main technology conference and events, hosted by David Marshall, Neil Hughes, and myself, Antony Savvas. We are all avid technology conference attendees, visiting the shows, big and small, that help set the agenda across the industry. In this show, we have a very special guest. This year, we attended the major end-user computing events staged by industry leader IGEL in both Miami and Frankfurt, Germany. IGEL is a secure endpoint operating system provider based around its preventative security model, and that model is growing greatly. The cloud-first approach taken by many organizations has actually resulted in a shift of endpoint data workloads away from the endpoint, no less, and into VDI, which stands for Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. DAS, which stands for Desktop as a Service, and SaaS, of course, Software as a Service Infrastructure, usually accessed through secure browsers. Before we move forward, let's introduce ourselves. David.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Marshall. I'm here in Austin, Texas, in the US. And in addition to being a co-host of Across the Tech Pond, I'm also the owner of the technology news site, VMblog.com.
Neil.
And I'm Neil Hughes. I host the Tech Talks Daily podcast and a number of other podcasts over at the Tech Talks Network. I also write for Cyber News, and I've had the privilege of interviewing Klaus a few times at the events there. Even saw you listening to Shaggy in Miami and Snap in Frankfurt. So we kind of know each other, Klaus.
Absolutely.
I'm Antony Savvas, of course. I write for IT Europa, which is a pan-European channel title covering system integrators, VARs, managed service providers, cloud service providers, etc. I also write for IoT Now and something called TechLed, which is a new communications portal covering the communications and unified communications industry. Like I said, as mentioned, we have a very special guest, and they're from IGEL, the chief executive of that company, no less, the CEO. And they will outline the strategic importance of secure endpoint user computing and the essential partnerships that are needed to make that happen. So there we go. Please introduce yourself, CEO of IGEL Technologies.
Thank you, Anthony, Neil, and David. Great to be here. I'm Klaus Oestermann. I'm the CEO of IGEL. It's been CEO of IGEL for a little over 2.5 years, and it's been great to have you guys at our conferences in Miami, and in Frankfurt, where we basically bringing the endpoint security EUC community, both customers, partners, as well as technology partners in this space together. As you've seen live, big events with very active participation of the community, both from partners, but also from customers themselves.
That's great. So I'll ask the first question. Some obvious pieces here. Where does IGEL fit in to the current end user computing market? What exactly do you do? And what is end user computing, otherwise known as EUC? Klaus.
Yeah, so basically, IGEL, we kind of operate like Switzerland in the middle of everything that's going on. I normally refer to it as a three-ring circus, right? So you have how do you deploy your applications on one side? So that's, are you using VDI DAS? Are you using browser? Are you using progressive web app methodologies? We're seeing a big shift now towards browser, but also container-based architectures and so forth. And most customers are living in the middle of a shift from being heavily VDI focused on to more browser and container-based infrastructure. So we're seeing that shift in on the deployment side. Then on the other side, you have how do you secure this? How do you integrate identity and so forth? And that's where Microsoft, whoever you use for secure services, SASE, with players like Zscaler, Palo Alto, Cisco, Netscope, and so forth, fits in. And then on top of that, the third ring is really what are you deploying this on? So is this on thin clients, on PCs, on tablets, or is it more OT oriented architectures? So this kind of encompasses what we call the preventative security model, right? So we have 130 partners that fits into one or more of these three rings and integrates with IGEL that basically enables us to put up a whole different security posture than what has been possible in the past, and really go out and replace Windows as the operating system on PCs, Windows IoT on thin clients and so forth, and basically delivers not just that overall new security model that's basically the opposite of what most people do today, which is it's based on a Windows model with 10, 15 security monitoring products on top. And you know it's going to go wrong, right? So you plan for things going wrong. So you monitor, detect, you mitigate, and you remediate when it goes wrong. But we think there's a whole different way of doing this. And we call that the preventative security model. Once customers have moved to IGEL, then they realize 65 to 75% savings on their endpoint budget. So if you're spending 10 million today, you might just be spending 3 or 4 million tomorrow after you've IGEL'd your infrastructure. And when you look at how does that come together? Well, it's basically half of that comes from hardware savings. You can run your hardware longer. You don't have to shift a third of your PCs to run Windows 11. 25% comes from software savings. So it's a much smaller stack you have on top of our operating system. You don't need 15 products to secure and monitor, but because basically it's a lockdown operating system and you cannot get in there. You don't need a lot of, the security you need on top of Windows. And then the last 25% comes from operational savings, where basically customers realize after 3 months, their help desk calls go down by 90%. And as a very simple explanation is because typically when you call the help desk, the answer is reboot your computer. And once you've done that two times, you don't call a third time, you just reboot your computer. So that's a simple explanation why we cut down help desk. It's you update your endpoints in less than 5 minutes versus hours that you typically experience in a Windows environment. So it's just much simpler to run. It's much easier to operate, and that's why you get 50% savings on hardware, 25 on software, 25 on operational savings. And then say the last thing is really what we've introduced with our IGEL Adaptive Secure Desktop, which enables you to manage this kind of shift and transition you're seeing from VDI to browser to native apps, including leveraging progressive web apps. So we're seeing a lot of our customers take Teams, Zoom, and so forth out of VDI and running that directly on the IGEL managed desktop. So kind of as you look to the future and how you shape the desktop for your end users, IGEL is the perfect endpoint to do that on.
Big potential savings there.
Absolutely, absolutely. We just released a survey, or actually a report of across 140 of our customers that shows on average they've saved 62% across industries. So that report is available and downloadable. So it doesn't matter if it's government or healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, retail, transportation. Across these sectors, customers are seeing on average 62% savings. I've seen the most extreme one I've seen is 91% savings over a 3-year period. But on average, very often we see things come out in more than 70% savings move into IGEL.
Okay, well, if people should have a look at that report, people get sometimes a bit warier when these claims are made, but IGEL's obviously putting it out there. So grab a copy of that report and look for yourselves. David, you have the next question.
Yeah, Klaus, thanks again for being here. I love the IGEL events. I've been to every one of them in the US, going back to the IGEL Disrupt here in Austin, Texas, which was the very first one. So and I look forward to seeing you in a few months at the Miami event.
Yeah, great to have you at these events, and we have a lot in store for you. March 30th to April 2nd at the Fontainebleau Hotel, Miami Beach, best conference hotel there. So happy you guys are coming.
Yeah, always a great venue, so I'm looking forward to it. Speaking of Miami, well, actually Miami and Frankfurt, you just recently completed the Now and Next events. It's, for customers and partners where your company made a number of key announcements around endpoint security and how IGEL is delivering it through an extended ecosystem that would serve end customers. Could you maybe give our viewers and listeners a broad outline of some of the key announcements that were made?
Yeah, so in Miami we made 20 announcements, and in Frankfurt that just ended in November, mid-November, we made 15 or 18 announcements actually. So some of the key highlights was we released the ROI report that I just mentioned. We made great announcements with key partners like Microsoft, Zscaler, Provider, Omnissa. So basically, when you take our 130 IGEL Ready partners, we always have a lot of joint announcements with them that we spare for those events. We announced a whole new initiative around contact centers. So basically, whether you call it call center, contact centers. So all the major players, whether that's Genesis, NICE, Avaya, Ring Central. You take all of these, they are now available in the IGEL App Store, and you can basically deploy those directly on your IGEL Adaptive Secure Desktop. So whether you do it over VDI or directly on the IGEL desktop, we now have support, very extended support for that setup. We also had Sanas on stage. So Sanas is a noise and accent reduction product, which is very interesting for everybody, not just for call center contact centers. But basically, if you have a trading floor with a lot of noise or so forth, they have some amazing technology that's being leveraged, including reducing accents. So if you have a call center in Philippines or India or so forth, they basically can make everybody sound like an American or an English person, whatever you want. So I'm still waiting for their Danish accent filter so I can sound like an American or a full English. So some really great new innovations that we've come out with. We also announced our future upcoming support for containers. So last year or this year actually in Miami, we announced the IGEL Managed Hypervisor, where you can take any version of Windows and run that as a managed hypervisor on your IGEL Adaptive Secure Desktop. And then we now lifted kind of the news around container support. So if you're doing containerized development, you can next year deploy that on IGEL as well. So when you kind of look to the future on how much you use VDI DAS, how you integrate with managed hypervisors, progressive web apps, all of these things can now run on the IGEL Adaptive Desktop. Other key things was like our UMS, our management system. We announced Compliant Connect support, which is very critical for government sector, but also for other critical industries. We announced ARM support. So basically, IGEL has been on x86 forever, and now we announced that we're coming out on ARM as well. And that means for a lot of tablets, a lot of handheld devices, whether they're coming from Zebra, Honeywell, or whatever, they are now you can now in the new year support IGEL on that as well. So that basically more than doubles the footprint of where you can deploy IGEL. Also important for our OT IoT initiative that we are on ARM, because a lot of OT IoT devices are running ARM. And then finally, there was many more announcements, but we announced IGEL AI Armor, and that's really if you have, especially your researchers in R&D on AI devices and so forth, how do you secure that from from the outside world, nation state attacks and so forth. So there's securing the device, and then there's what do we do specifically for AI workloads. So we kind of unveiled what's coming out from IGEL in that space. So those are just some of the highlights. There were many more announcements, but too many to mention.
Excellent. We like to go to events when something's actually announced. It makes our job slightly easier, and
Yeah.
it keeps us off the beach, I suppose. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Neil, you had the next question.
Yeah, and talking of announcements there, I think there was something like 18 at one, 20 at another. You guys really deliver on the announcements at those big events. And I think there were several big moments from the events this year. And as a music and tech guy, I think outside of IGEL, Mark Templeton's keynote bringing tech and AI back to the Moody Blues was a big highlight to me. But one of the key themes that stood out in both Frankfurt and Miami was endpoint resilience, how it's often seen as the missing piece in cybersecurity strategies. And we heard about many at IGEL's preventative security models there and how it's being expanded with key technologies. But again, for people listening that are possibly new to this and maybe even unaware of their vulnerabilities in their current endpoint strategy, how are you doing this? Is it through an expanded ecosystem of tech alliance partners? And for those that don't know, what is that IGEL preventative security model for people just tuning in and hear about it for the first time? Because there is a lot to cover here, but can you give us a little rundown?
Yeah, so I kind of tried to describe a little bit before. So I kind of refer to it as a three-ring circus, right?
Yeah.
Where most customers they have three different parts of the organization that are responsible for different things and don't always coordinate this very well. So one is the responsible for how to deploy tech apps and app methodologies. The other one for identity security, and then the third one for endpoints, right? And so we're basically bringing these three elements together in our preventative security model and doing things like how do you establish trust between the endpoint, your identity management solution, and the applications that you want to get to? How do you isolate one application from another? Uh, how do you so this is some of the new things that we've announced is how can you basically publish personas. So if you're an organization, you might have 20 or the most extreme we work with has 250 different personas. So you can basically say persona number one gets these 15 applications in scenario one, this in scenario two. And then stuff that we're working on with our security partners is how can we basically ensure that based on the access scenario you have, that you only get access to whatever is secure at that point in time. So this is us working with our 130 IGEL Ready partners, basically locking down the endpoints, ensuring it take healthcare. If you're in the emergency room, you have the following things. You have 10 different nurses and 5 different doctors badging into one desktop within a 2-hour period. How do you make that happen, right? Now those same people go to Starbucks. And then what do you get? What do they get access to when they're at Starbucks at a different device? So this is pretty complicated from a security standpoint. And we kind of sit like Switzerland in the middle of all of this and work with these security identity partners on basically being a clearinghouse for what's going to happen. So that's the crux of PSM or preventative security model and how it works in real time. And then if we look at all of the alliance partners that we have, it's basically who's who in every one of these different areas that are partnering with IGEL, and you're seeing them make announcements based on what we do together, and many of them as their next gen endpoint security strategy. So this is very, very core to how we do things. It's not like IGEL is doing everything by itself. If we take zero trust architecture, we deliver on all the requirements in zero trust architecture, not just by IGEL, but with our partners. So if you look at zero trust architecture, it's just not for US government. This is being adopted by governments around the world. This is being adopted by what I call critical industry. So the 16 different industries running a country, everything from banking to transportation to healthcare, oil and gas, every single critical sector that can be hit by nation state attacks need to be protected. And what we're seeing now is that these different sectors are starting to adopt zero trust architecture within their architecture as well.
Neil, did you want to come back there at all?
No, the only thing I was going to mention as well is one of the big takeaways for me from the interviews that I had was that endpoint resiliency and how it's often forgotten about. I just wanted to make a quick point about that, and maybe you can hammer that home, Klaus.
Yeah,
'Cause I
no,
think
no, that's yeah. So if you look at it today, the standard endpoints are pretty vulnerable, right? And we
yeah,
see that with cyber attacks, predominantly, in healthcare, in state and local. You see in local governments, you see it in, you know, every single industry is being attacked, right? So how do you shore up the endpoints? And that's basically where by we call it IGELing it, right? You're securing that endpoint in a whole different security model, and where it's no longer possible to penetrate it. You can't write to the OS. It's all locked down. Each workload is running independently of other ones and so forth. So you're also securing the blast radius. So if something is attacked, how do you lock it down? How do you secure it and so forth? So really a survivability. So we've basically created a universe if you're running IGEL. The second thing that we've done now is and we re-emphasized, we announced earlier in September our business continuity and disaster recovery concept. In brief, we call it BC and DR. And that's basically for the environments that have not moved on to IGEL. It's still running Windows OS. How do you secure that, right? And so we've implemented something where it's non-disruptive. You can keep running Windows, but you basically dual boot IGEL next to Windows, and then you take your F9 key, and then you make that your IGEL 911, IGEL 999, IGEL 112, depending on where in the world you are. So if you get ransomware attack, you simply reboot, hold down that key, and then you reboot to IGEL in 60, 90 seconds. So so that's how we can implement resiliency for Windows Endpoint without basically changing the operating system that you're running on a daily basis. So if you get hacked, it's kind of an insurance policy you have. You can then go to a much better place called IGEL and then live there. You can live there forever, or you can, once you fixed Windows, you can move back to that. But that's a new concept we launched in September. It was an announcement in Frankfurt last month, but basically we reiterated it quite a bit, and that's, how do we help 100% of the endpoints is really what we are out to do.
yeah, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring that up, because obviously I think we've all seen the events with Jaguar Land Rover there, $1 billion or £1 billion losses caused by an attack, and that when any company is hit by an attack, I don't know, the it's not really realistic to re-image 5,000 machines, is it? Almost overnight. That stuff takes weeks, if not months.
Yeah, so that's what we're seeing. It takes forever to get back in production, and when you look at business continuity disaster recovery strategy, a lot of it goes into how do I secure my data, how do I secure the data center, how can I get my data center shift to a second data center. Very, very few of the reports and the research, and this is actually going into what I think is the most important thing is the endpoint. Because if you can't operate the endpoint, you can have all your data ready in the data center. But if your users can't get to it because the endpoints don't work, then what's the point? So we basically now advocating that we think endpoint is the most important thing to secure. And there's actually hardly no research from Gartner or any other research company out there on the endpoint, what to do. They have sometimes, move to VDI. But again, or a DAS in the cloud. But if your endpoint doesn't work, you can't move anywhere, right? You have nothing to operate on. So that's why we're big advocates now of securing the endpoint from ransomware attacks and by going into IGEL on a daily production, and then if you don't want to do that, then have it as a backup strategy.
Of course, the IGEL claim is that the IGEL has never been hacked. So you must be doing something right.
Yeah, so I think starting with not making it possible to get to the operating system is kind of rule number one, right? And then so it's just a whole set of it's a framework we created of how we shut things down, how we basically triangulate with other elements to ensure that you don't get in and you can't do anything.
Yeah. So next question from me, Klaus. The Technology Alliance Partner Initiative, the IGEL Ready initiative. I think at the last count, correct me if I'm wrong, there was about 150 partners in that. Is that correct? Maybe you
Yeah,
could name
so
a few others.
it's growing very fast, so it's in that vicinity, and what we've started onboarding is a lot of ISVs, right? So independent software vendors. So you saw in Frankfurt, we announced all the contact center partners. We're working now in other areas of application, basically different ISVs that are having different application sets. We keep onboarding security, networking, SASE partners, and so forth. And then customers keep coming to us and saying, "Can you support these devices? Can you support these USB scanners? Whatever they have." So over a 25-year period, we've added all of these different partners on the hardware side. We keep adding there as well. So it keeps growing, and we have 8 different parts of the IGEL Ready system, and each part keeps growing pretty fast as more and more. Sometimes it's the partners themselves that approach us. Sometimes it's customers saying, "Hey, I have these, devices or these applications I need running. I need it in the IGEL App Store. Can you help us get it there?" So this
Yeah.
is growing very fast, the ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think IGEL's, slightly unusual in the way it goes to market. The main part of its business is going through its technology alliance partners. It's not a case, give me, we're going to keep it all, we're going to control it all. You are very much like a partnership organization, and sometimes that's quite unusual in technology, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think a lot of vendors are trying to build what I call a walled garden, where Apple is a good example, of building where you use all of there and it's all theirs and they don't really share a lot. Our approach is very different, right? Where we think we have an amazing garden, but it's open to technology partnerships where you can come in and plant your stuff here and plant your stuff there and so forth. So that we basically invite people into our garden and basically create a universe where everybody can collaborate with everybody. So it's not just IGEL and them, it's oftentimes a triangulation between hardware, software, and IGEL. So this is truly unique in the industry. And that's why I oftentimes refer to us as Switzerland, right? Where we work pretty much with everybody, even partners that some days we collaborate, other days we compete with them on
Yeah.
different components, right?
Yeah.
So
Thank you. David, do you want to come in now?
Yeah, Klaus, I know we've kind of talked about, the cybersecurity thing, the ransomware thing. One of the other topics that's come up, even at the IGEL events themselves, everybody's talking about AI. I mean, you can't get away from it. Thinking you even mentioned it, just I guess briefly earlier in this conversation, you touched on IGEL AI Armor. Kind of dig into what IGEL's doing to address these areas of ransomware AI, and talk about that, and maybe give a little deeper into what AI armor is. I know one of the questions that often comes up is the data is going into AI models, but is the AI armor product, is it designed to help protect the data going into those models, or is it more about managing the massive compute requirements that AI heavy applications are placing even at the endpoint today.
Yeah, so I think first off, there's a very interesting trend going on, which is that more and more we see more and more of the kind of large language models being deployed at the endpoint rather than at the data center, right? So we're seeing a decentralization of AI to be executed on local endpoints. And as you do that, it's more and more important to secure these endpoints. And that's what we're doing with AI Armor. So first off, uh, getting on an endpoint running IGEL OS versus another OS is important, right? Then second off, we're looking at what are you trying to protect and how do we put up a posture against this, right? So part of this is what are we working on with our hardware partners and chip vendor partnerships. So basically, you can think about the AI endpoint as a secure enclave. How do we secure that enclave? How do we trust that enclave? And even if it goes into cloud and works in and around with cloud, right? So you create a trusted enclave from endpoint to cloud as well. So all of this is encompassed by our vision for what we're going to do with AI Armor. So it's protecting the assets, it's protecting what are you running, it's doing specific security for AI elements or AI applications of that. So it's a very all-encompassing concept that basically takes into perspective not only what are we, but also as we start looking back to the personas I talked about before, as you define your personas, you will have very critical personas in your organization where you say, well, our researchers, we got to protect, our management team, we got to protect it, because those are more prone to be really targeted for nation state attacks because they're trying to get to very secret IP and so forth. So what we are working on as well is tying all these things together so that you might have, 75% of your personas, you want to protect them, but there's 25% you want to protect even more. You want to have a more critical alert system around them and so forth, right? So how do we triangulate what we do with players like CrowdStrike and others, So we start putting ecosystem vendors in there that are doing other things beyond what we are doing, and then feeding them through our IGEL Insight system. This looks like suspicious behavior. What do you think, right? So basically, you want to put an extra ring of security around certain people, and then you want to put an alert system based on how critical the workloads are, how critical the people are, and how critical the different apps. So you might want to have a different level of protection around teams than you have on specific AI applications and so forth. So this is still early days. It's a lot of this is extended collaboration with our key partners on hardware, chipset side, but also on the security and on the application side.
Thank you. Neil, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, we're at that time of year where futurists and technologists are filling our feeds with prediction pieces at the moment. And obviously, I think it was last year Gartner mismentioning endpoint security, as you mentioned, but they did predict agentic AI as a big trend for 2025. And at that time of year where we're all trying to work out what's going to dominate next year, what does it mean for me, what does it mean for my business, etc. I'm going to ask you to look into your virtual crystal ball now, Klaus. What
Yeah.
big tech trends do you predict next year, or are you keeping an eye on?
Yeah, so we work a lot 3, 5 years out. So that's kind of where my lens is. So let me try and hone it in a little bit, but I might be looking a little bit into 27, 28 as well as I predict these things. And I think as we talk to our customers and prospects and partners, this is very critical, right? And IGEL is 100% indirect, so we work through key partners in the market, and part of what we do is we work with them on what should they be focused on in the future. So with partners, I mean like resellers and LARs and system integrators and so forth. So I think one thing we're starting to see now, and I think that will really come in 26 into 27, is zero trust architecture, right? So that's kind of been very core, very well defined by basically Pentagon in the US, right? So they have a group that we've been working closely with on what is this for IT and what is zero trust for OT and IoT as well. So you got to actually look at your entire environment now, right? And that's basically a 7-pillar model where you define, the endpoint, the data, the end user, and so forth. So we are firm believers in that this is the foundation of how to basically define and deliver secure computing in the future. And we are now starting to see healthcare, financial services in particular, adopting that. So it's no longer just US government. We see this adopted in the European theater where European governments are adopting this framework as well. We're seeing kind of Five Eyes, so from an intelligence standpoint, Five Eyes starting to adopt it as well. So I believe that this is going to roll out and become a global theme in 2026, and really become the crux of how not just governments but critical industries running a country are defining their IT and OT in the future. So we believe this is super fundamental. I think number two is endpoint resilience, and how basically that can be redefined by, if you don't want to move on to a super secure operating system, business continuity, disaster recovery, endpoint resilience, right? And that's where we've launched our initiative, BC and DR, for Windows endpoints. I think we can see that now. That's a major trend that like 75% of the inbound interest we have right now is on that. So a lot of customers, a lot of prospects are looking at how do we secure the endpoints, and it seems like what we have out there resonates. I think that's becoming a major theme for next year, and hopefully we'll see the analysts start writing about this as well as customers. They start bombarding them with, what do I do on the endpoints? Then I think another is this shift of how do I deploy my applications, right? Where a lot of critical industries have been very reliant on VDI, some are moving towards DAS now, but I'm seeing more of a picture of mixing things. So how do you mix VDI DAS with browser-based deployments, with progressive web apps deployment, with containerized app deployment? And oftentimes people think, oh, I got to move 100% to browser, 100% to containers. I don't think that's what customers will do. They'll still have 50, 100 apps running over VDI or DAS. They might be moving some of their main applications to a different paradigm. They might be moving the new applications to a different paradigm. And that's where, again, we believe that our IGEL Adaptive Secure Desktop is the perfect target, the perfect way of setting up that future architecture. Then we see customers will spend a lot of time. So Microsoft just announced the basically end of support for Windows 10, and with 40 years of Windows, you see that shift like every 18, 24 months, new version out, go buy new hardware, whatever. So that's going to drive a lot of customers. So either they got to pay $60+ a year to Microsoft for extended support. The following year it's 120 something, or they find a way to get to Windows 11, and you can go out and change a third of your PCs or half, how many you have left that don't have the TPM chipset needed to run Windows 11, or you can simply IGEL it, right? Where you move it onto IGEL, and then we can deploy Windows 11 apps via 3 or 4 different mechanisms. Can be as a managed hypervisor via VDI or DAS, or in a containerized setup. So we think that's going to be a key driver. And then compliance. So all of the verticals, whether it's government, healthcare, financial services, transportation, manufacturing regulated by FDA or other regulatory frameworks, that's going to really set the agenda for how you think about endpoints, how you modernize endpoints with that compliance framework in mind. And then, AI might be number one, given how much time it takes up in the media and so forth. But really, AI-powered security is expected, right? And that's where we're working not only by IGEL, but with all our partners around the IGEL AI armor concept. We believe that is now everybody's rolling out. Well, how do you secure it? You become a lot more vulnerable. So we expect that to be front and center as well. So I mentioned six things. The sequence of that might differ customer from customer or vertical to vertical. But I think these are going to be some of the main drivers for customers out there.
Okay, before we come back to Neil, David, is there anything you'd like to say in response to that very, very busy crystal ball of Klaus's there?
No, I don't have anything to add other than I appreciate it. I know it's a difficult thing to talk about predictions that far out. So, for you to do so, and not only do so, but give us six really important, predictions as far as where things are headed, I think is commendable.
Neil?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's so much detailed information there that if analysts watching and listening are not writing about this stuff next year, I want to know why. There's just so much gold in that for me.
Well, I mean, they say AI is putting analysts out of business. It looks like Klaus is trying to put the analysts out of business as well.
No, we're trying to help them on what we think is important for their customers to read about. And I think endpoint security and endpoint resilience is a big missed point by most analysts at this point in time. So,
Okay. Well, last thing, I mean, at this time of year, I mean, people have got some predictions there. They'll also be looking towards how they're going to secure their systems over the next 12 months. 12 months using a very broad brush, Klaus. I mean, could you give us an idea of what three elements you would say to the users, the end customers out there, the elements they should be addressing to secure their systems against ransomware, against the wider threats created by AI and widening the security footprint? What three elements do you think they should be looking to address to make sure their end users can get hold of their apps and data at all times across all environments?
yeah, so I'd say really consider the operating system of your endpoint and make sure that what you base yourself on in the future is something that is, super secure, right? And that would oftentimes involve moving to something like IGEL OS. So I think that's recommendation number one. Recommendation number two is if you don't want to do that, then what do you do when typically we say when shit hits the fan, right? So when you get attacked, are you down for, and Neil, you mentioned Land Rover before. I mean, we have auto manufacturers running their entire manufacturing on IGEL. They have not been compromised, right? So our recommendation number one is put it on secure OS. If you for some reason don't want to do that, cannot do that, well then have a strategy for how do you recover, right? And fast. And that's where we think IGEL BC and DR, business continuity disaster recovery, we basically hold down F9 and then in 75 seconds you boot to IGEL and get to a good place with the endpoint and you're back in production. We think that is definitely something people should look at. And if not for Christmas this year, then for Christmas next year, right? So that's very key. And then your entirety of the security around your how apps are being deployed, how you deploy OT and IoT. So I think really looking at the future of secure service at SASE and tying that in with what do you deploy on your endpoint? I think that's very, very important. So we're seeing a lot of companies now re-engineering, rethinking that whole element of it. So I think those are probably three of the key things I would say people should look at.
Excellent. Well, I hope all the viewers and listeners are going to be suitably informed. It just remains for us to say goodbye now. It's goodbye from me, Antony Savvas, until the very next Across the Tech Pond package coming very soon. Klaus?
Yeah, just wanna say holidays are coming on pretty soon, so happy holidays to everybody, no matter how you celebrate it. It's for IGEL, it's been an amazing year with 38 announcements at our two events. We are knee deep now in prepping for the next Miami event, which is March 30th to April 2nd at the Fontainebleau Hotel, Miami Beach. So that's so we spend a lot of time on that now. A lot of new things will come out there. So go online, sign up for it, and book the hotel room, and hopefully we'll see you in Miami, if not before. So
Excellent.
thank you.
Excellent. David?
Yeah, I just want to say, a special thank you to Klaus for joining us today on the ATP and for sharing all that great information with us and our audience. And like you said, I want to reiterate as a person who's been to every IGEL event this year, or in the US, sorry, make sure you check out igel.com and find out more information about the upcoming event in Miami. It's a great venue and it's a great event. Like we all talked about earlier, there's no shortage of great announcements that get made on the technology front. So I invite everybody to, if you haven't been before, check out the IGEL Now and Next event.
There you go. And David's going to pay your bar bill if you attend. Moving quickly to Neil.
Yeah, I would just say anyone watching or listening, attending or planning on attending, if you see us there, please come over and say hello. And it's outside of the announcements. You always have great music acts on. This year we've seen Shaggy and Snap. I've been doing a little research for you, Klaus. S Express, they're no longer in business, but Scooter, 2 Unlimited, Technotronic, I'll leave it up to you, my friend.
Yeah, we'll soon be announcing the main act I think we had a great party last year at the Live nightclub at the Fontainebleau Hotel, jam-packed, and Shaggy did an amazing performance, and followed by DJ Mills. So make sure you come this year. That's an epic party every year. So.
For people who didn't know that, that's an IGEL exec who actually gets on the turntables there and does his bit. So there you go.
Brilliant.
Okay, well, thanks very much, all listeners and viewers. Until the next time, thanks very much from across the tech pond. Bye-bye. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.